And now we'll bring in civil rights leader Niger Innis. And first off, Niger, I want to get your take on the past 2 weeks with these two verdicts. Do you think that the right decisions were made by both of those juries?
I think the right decision was made in both of those juries. And I think it is a time for all Americans, regardless of race, and quite frankly, regardless of party, if you're really patriots, you should be very proud that our jury system and the rule of law prevailed in both of those cases. And in particular, the Ahmaud Arbery case in Georgia, I mean, just to get a little perspective, a mostly white jury came and convicted 3 white men for the brutal murder of this young man, Arbery, who obviously was innocent of not committing any particular crime. This could not have happened 100 years ago. And so I'm going to cut against the grain of my progressive ideological opponents and say that nothing has changed in America. That's nonsense. That is bogus. And all the fears and apprehensions that individuals had about there being a right verdict, the jury saw the evidence. The jury looked at the evidence. They heard both sides, defense and the prosecutor, and they made the right, just decision. I think it was a great day for our country and one to be celebrated. And I'm very disappointed in President Biden and Vice President Harris for how they dealt with this case and the Rittenhouse case, how President Biden actually called him, I believe, some type of white militia nationalist or something along those lines before the case even went to trial.
And it's not just the president and the vice president, because after the Rittenhouse verdict, Michigan Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib tweeted, quote, "Our justice system is broken. It protects white supremacy. The 2 people who were killed deserve justice, and so did our communities who continue to be targeted with violence like this." Yet less than a week later, as you mentioned, a jury handed down murder charges to Ahmaud Arbery's killers, a mostly white jury. So does that sound like a broken system to you?
No, it sounds like a dynamite system. And listen, no system is perfect, and no system is better than the people that serve on the system. And I think it's a reflection on the greatest system in the world by comparison, our judicial system, which of course is rooted in our Constitution and our Bill of Rights. As a part of our Constitution, the greatest system in the world by comparison to any other system on earth. But it's also a reflection of the people that are part of that system. And the jury of Ahmaud Arbery's and the those who were accused, they're peers. And those peers did their job. And contrary to the hype that white jurors in Georgia would not be able, a mostly white jury in Georgia would not be able to come and give justice to the Arbery family, which deserves justice, is absurd and again should be celebrated. And look, I'm going to make a distinction between the so-called squad. I mean, they are activist political hacks and racial hacks. All right, they have an agenda. They're doing their own thing. But I'm talking about the President of the United States. I'm talking about the Vice President of the United States. It's one thing when you're a candidate and you play all kinds of political games to get into office. But now you're the President of the United States, and you have the responsibility to bring our country together and celebrate moments of unity that this really could have been, and the verdicts of Rittenhouse and Arbery coming together within 1 week's period of time. It was a magnificent opportunity for celebrating and promoting unity within our country, and the president and the vice president blew it.
Now, plenty of celebrities, they've also inserted themselves into the conversation. Here's late night host Amber Ruffin after the Rittenhouse verdict.
It's not okay for a man to grab a rifle, travel across state lines, and shoot 3 people and then walk free. It's not okay for the judicial system to be blatantly and obviously stacked against people of color.
And Niger, you've talked about how you think the justice system is working, but what do you think of constantly this perpetuation of he crossed the state lines with the gun when we know the gun was in Wisconsin when he obtained it? What do you think of them not getting the facts of the case right and continuing to run with it?
You know, I sometimes I go back and forth between its utter stupidity and ignorance on their part or its purposeful lying. And I have to lean towards more folk are promoting, they want to promote the big lie. And they want to do it because they demonize Rittenhouse. But what is really going on here is the Rittenhouse, they had to demonize Rittenhouse leading up to the verdict. They had to try to demonize him even after the verdict because what Rittenhouse represents, what this brave young man represents, is a fundamental right of self-defense. The gentleman was there being a good community member, trying to help and preserve peace by protecting property that had been looted and burned and in many cases destroyed. That town is still recovering from the economic havoc that was wreaked that night. And while he was there doing that, he came under assault. And he was saving his own life, which is clearly what the jury came up with. And the reason they cannot recognize, and this is why I say it's purposeful lying and not just ignorance, I'm sure on the part of some of these celebrities and some of these commentators, it was pure ignorance. My God, the media hype was so heavy about this being a racial incident that I even believed, with all my years of experience, I even believed that one of the those that were shot by Rittenhouse was black. I knew 2 out of 3 were white, but I didn't know all 3 were white. That shows how heavy the hype was with this. But I think the fact that what is really made these folk on the far left afraid is that the Rittenhouse case is a clear example of self-defense and a reaffirmation of our Second Amendment and our entire Bill of Rights. This young man was exercising his Second Amendment, and I would argue God-given rights of self-defense when he protected his person, his from harm and potentially from murder,
Niger,
from being murdered.
thank you very much for the time. That's all the time we have tonight. Appreciate your insight, and thanks for being here.
My pleasure.